Hello and welcome to another episode of the Self Study Show. Today we've got a very special guest. Her name is Jo. I'm going to hand it straight over to you, Jo. Tell us, what do you do?
Well, what I do is I help people align with purpose. And there's a lot of buzz out there about finding your purpose, living with your purpose. And I've kind of been on such a long self-discovery journey, pretty much all my life, with this deep desire to feel like I'm so, aligned with my purpose and living by my purpose. And so I've got a podcast called Aligned with Purpose. And I'm kind of really developing coaching and mentoring around that to help people to feel more sense of deep connection to themselves, self-confidence, self-value, and self-worth. So that's kind of me, really. That's what I do.
Okay. So trying to find purpose, there's a lot to dig around there. So how do we go about finding our purpose?
Well, it really is about knowing who you are. Um, as I say, mine started on the self-discovery journey of not knowing who I was and circumstance. And I always questioned why things happened, why to find the meaning behind things. A lot of things didn't make sense to me. Schooling was difficult. I had a situation that happened at 15, 16, and it took me on the mentoring journey. And I've always just questioned. So I think it's really about questioning who you are, why why do these things happen, and actually understanding yourself and other people.
Yeah. I'm really glad you said that. You got to find out who you are because the title of my book is called Who the Hell Are You? So
Oh yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm of the same opinion, if you don't know who you are, then you don't truly know what you love, and therefore you don't know sort of what you're aiming for, really, because we can make decisions based off, how do I say this? I've made decisions in the past thinking I want things, and I've achieved those wants to find out that I didn't really want them.
Yeah. Oh my God, I so relate to you because the journey I've been on is exploring, like I said, myself, and I've done any which job that I thought would satisfy my needs, needs, wants, desires, all of those kind of things, and then gone for a job, worked really hard to get the job, and then didn't really want it. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. I've got very curious as to, well, what's underneath that? And I think it's about finding yourself is finding purpose, and purpose isn't what you think it is. It's not your job. It's not your material things. It's not those things. It's a feeling state. That's what purpose really is. And it's enrichment,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know?
I can really relate to that. Yeah, because it's not a tangible outside object, it's a feeling state. And
Mm,
yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying there.
mm,
And I'm just thinking about those wants that I wanted and got them and then realized that I didn't want them. It's very hard to keep sort of trimming that down, isn't it? Trimming that down. What are your wants? Because even now I can get blindsided. I think I want something and might start going for that goal and then realize, well, I don't actually want that because that's going to have negative sort of connotations in other areas of my life. So there's this
mm,
like peeling back of the onion layers, as they say.
mm.
Would you say it's a constant, never-ending sort of process?
Yeah, it really kind of is. And it just depends what tools you use in your toolbox and perhaps what kind of beliefs you have, like that link to your interests. Because as a little girl, I don't know if you've ever done any inner child work, that kind of looking at the archetypes within yourself, like, your teenager, your inner child. And when I start really thinking about purpose and what I really want, it's a never-ending unfolding journey. But if you can go back to the essence of that child in you, what really excited you, and I always thought differently. Like I was almost like an outsider and an observer.
Mm,
Could always feel people's pain, you know, that kind of energetically. I could feel people's presence. So it's really like you think you want something because it's been learned behavior, right? In the family, like go out and get a job. This is the societal thing that we have. So we think we want these things. And then when we get to where we want to be. And then we go, I think I maybe want more. And
mm,
that's the kind of journey I've been on, having left a job in 2020, feeling so despondent working in the NHS. And I left a job without a job to go to. I took a massive risk,
mm,
but I just couldn't ignore the dissatisfaction anymore because my needs and wants weren't getting met,
mm.
you
Yeah,
know?
it's mad. There's a lot of similarities, because before I was doing this and before I was an author, I was a business owner of a removals and storage company, and I ran that business for 13 years. It was very successful, but it did get to a point where I just couldn't ignore that this business was not necessarily my choice because my dad got me a job when I was 15 in that industry. And then rather than looking inside, I just looked around me and thought, what can I do? I'll get to the top of this, and I did, succeeded and wasn't fulfilled. And I think as you get a bit older, you get a bit more aware and you
Mm.
start, I think to start with, you just understand, well, something's not right. I think awareness is key, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's getting curious. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Looking with self-awareness and going, why did that happen? And one of the key, we get these pivotal points perhaps um, in our life where our bodies start doing some funny things, and then you go, that's interesting. And mine was a terrible skin condition. It was quite horrific for about a year. It developed quite severely on my face and my arms and my legs, and I went along the conventional route. And I'd had major surgery actually a year before that, and then I developed this skin condition. And I was like, I can't live like this. So I got curious, like holistically looking at my body, and went to the medical profession. They said, oh, we can't do anything for you other than, steroidal creams. And I just kind of knew. I just got this feeling in my tummy that was like, no, I need to dig under this. I need to get curious. I need to get self-aware. Surely there's a way of me healing from the inside out. And that's really started my sort of spiritual, holistic healing journey. And then more recently, when a family member had got a cancer brain tumor diagnosis this year, I got even more curious about purpose, because there was that feeling of grief and loss. Not that he's with us and he's doing well, but I felt triggered to grief and loss and disconnection.
Mm.
And I thought, that's interesting about purpose. What is purpose? You lose your job and all the rest of it, and that's what I'm finding. This
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And with the skin condition, did that work doing that from the inside out?
Yeah, yeah. I remember, and they say when the student's ready, the master appears with the right book, or the right sort of thing comes to you. And a friend said to me, you need to go to a chiropractor. And I thought, really? Why would I need to go to a chiropractor? Because I tried everything. And it was going to this chiropractor, and just listening to what she had to tell me about flight, fight, freeze, stress response, the nervous system. And
Mm.
I just realized that I'd been running on vapor, running on empty, running on stress, and my body was just reacting to the post trauma from the major surgery. And yes, within I think it was three months, it's completely gone, bar one patch. And I ended up being the chiropractor's PA.
Right. Yeah.
I healed so quickly, and it was serendipity. It was like this my friend said, you need to go see this person. I explored it. I said, yes. I got curious. And then I ended up having this incredible treatment called network spinal analysis, where you just release tension from the spine.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's fantastic because I think like yeah, again, that's why I didn't want to ask too many questions lined up because we stumbled upon something here really important and it's something that I'd love to get across to the viewers is like doctors and medical profession, they're all looking to treat the effect, but you got to look at the cause a lot of the times. And just like your story, my wife was also diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 34. And she was told by all the medical professionals she was definitely going to lose her hair. So that was the one thing that she didn't want to lose. You know, that was worse than the actual diagnosis for her. So I brought her the magic book, which is full of gratitude practices in there. And she applied all of that and she never lost her hair and come through all of it. And all of the medical professionals are just they're gobsmacked by it.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. They just call it a freak thing, but there's a lot more going on there.
There's
Um,
so much more to it than that. So I'm trained in conventional medicine and I'm trained in holistic practices. And I've also just recently qualified as a level 2 counsellor. I'm not allowed to practice because I'm not a level 4, but I've got the basics of all of those different, let's call it modalities, trainings. But most of all, I've got life experience.
mm,
And I anybody who that's been through any kind of trauma, physical, mental, emotional, you know, it's unique to you. And that's the same thing with purpose. It's unique to you. That's why you have to work really closely with someone for a period of time as to find out what's important to them. But what was important to me was obviously as a woman to have eczema on my face and all that, I felt ugly. I felt awful. And as a woman, anything, losing part of your body or whatever, I just wouldn't accept it.
mm,
And I was quite adamant. And it found me the resolve found me. And I went on this period, this journey, and this is the whole thing about self-discovery, looking inward. And I'm not to say that I actually had a reoccurrence of the eczema. And that then took me to a deeper level of inner child work
mm.
where I revisited the root cause
Yeah, the
and I
root
did
cause.
get to the root cause. It's not an easy journey. And that's why you need someone to go on the journey with you that you trust, that you can relate to, that you can feel safe with. And I think when someone's already walked that path, you know, you can this is what I want to be able to do is help people with their self-expression to be uniquely who they really are, and they don't completely understand metaphysics or neuroscience or all these other things about who you really are.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Mm,
I study Bruce Lee a lot. And Bruce
okay.
Lee, even in the 60s, if you watch a lot of his interviews, he was so ahead of his time, so to speak. He was saying about trying to honestly express who you are. I don't think people at the time really knew what he was on about, but if you watch it now, and he says it's a very hard thing to do.
Mm,
He uses this term as well, like he uses it with martial arts, he said when the opponent's there, I do not hit. He puts his fist up. He says it hits by itself. And I think it's just that self-awareness. What he's trying to get across is that, we're connected to this limitless resource and we just need to activate it. And when we're in those positions of acting, it will hit by itself. We will react by ourselves. We'll have
yeah.
that inner energy, but it's just making sure we're connected to the right thing.
It is, and I've been working on this most recently as to, I mean, a lot of people perhaps are quite reactionary. Let's just use the times we're in at the moment, can be quite reactionary to energies that's related to their thoughts, their beliefs, their upbringings, their behaviors. And for me, I'm so sensitive. I mean, that's what skin conditions are really about, that on some level you don't feel safe in your body. If you read Louise Hay, and you can heal your body, I think it's called. I've done a lot of work around that. But most recently, I've kind of come up with 6 practical ways to stay aligned with purpose.
Mm.
Ultimately is me being connected to me and me feeling the love and the energy within me to not be diverted down a rabbit hole on someone else's agenda or someone else's feelings. And I've written some free talks. I've done a 4-day course. It's all on Insight Timer. I don't know if you've heard of Insight Timer, the
No.
meditation app. It's a really useful app, and people can find me on there, and it's just free content. But it's not meditations, it's just free facts, it's free content, free talk on, if you do this, um, you can just then tap in to that energy. And that's really what I feel is the simplicity of aligning to your energy, your body, your system, and ultimately you
Yeah,
know.
I think again, like you're saying here, more awareness needs to come about this, energy. Chapter 3 of my book is You Are Electric, I called it. That got some eyebrow raisers from my editors, but I'm just referring there to the energy that we have. We're all vibrating
Yeah,
this high speed of vibration. There's an infinite number of frequencies, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Electricity emits a pulse, we emit a pulse, there's an
Absolutely.
energy field.
Biorhythmic, isn't it? It's the
Yeah.
biorhythmic, and I mean, I've also been researching about like there's like house music. It's got like a rhythmic sort of pulse,
Mm.
and actually it relates to, the pulse of the body, and it's like that can shift your feeling frequency. And I think this is the space and place when people are trying to change their illness, their disease, and they can't quite tap into their own frequency and the frequency of the earth. This is where there's so many factors that come into it, your beliefs and your thoughts. But it's an interesting what you're saying. We are electric. I really like that. you know
And yeah, just like electric as well, energy can only flow from higher to lower potential. If you ask an electrician, from positive to negative.
yeah.
Therefore, if you're in a job that you don't like and you're in a negative state, no matter how much you try and motivate yourself, it doesn't flow that way.
Oh, I
Therefore,
know. Yeah.
if you're on purpose, you've
Yeah.
got bundles of energy. Because when people say, "Oh, I just don't have any energy," it's actually a ridiculous thing to say because we're nothing but a ball of energy.
Exactly.
It's just that it's not flowing for you because you might be in a negative state. As soon as you're in a positive state, we've got energy for days.
We have, and I think if you use the energy of the collective, so I use astrology, numerology, neuroscience, metaphysics, color therapy, all of those kind of things. And if you look at the energy of the collective, because we, beat to the rhythm of whatever drum, there's the stuck energy right now, but it's in the collective. I can feel it, you may or may not, but I think a lot of us do, like, I don't know, like you can feel the moon energy at the full moon and the new moon. And it's just all these different energies that are outside of us that we can't necessarily control do affect us. And shifts are coming. I can feel it, even though there's perhaps polarization, there's also uplifting shifts coming. And I think that's where we need to be heading and focusing on, that we can actually vibrate on a higher level than these low, like you say, old, dense energies, you know?
Yeah. And like you say, a lot of those dense energies can come from limiting beliefs that
Yeah.
we are outdated, that we've just never taken the time to examine. Something that might have happened to us when we were a child,
Yeah.
it's still playing out,
Yeah.
as an adult.
Yeah. 100%. I had childhood eczema. I had eczema, asthma. So there was that kind of, I mean, the only way to relate is that kind of victim energy. We get that in the collective as well. That, we get, some people get labeled that you're too sensitive and all of this, and that you're a
Yeah.
victim. And actually, I could say to you, actually, I'm just, I've just got a big heart and I'm open and I'm just very empathetic, but I'm not a victim.
No.
But you can, that can become a belief that keeps you small.
Yeah, of course, because when you're a child, thinking back to my own ones, a lot of my own limiting beliefs come from other people's opinions, adult
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah.
And it can be very subtle as well. So just one I remember in particular, no one likes a smart ass. Now
Yeah.
that gave me the belief then to like, not express myself in an honest way. Um,
Exactly.
no one likes a chatterbox. That kind of gave me a bit of a fear around public speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Public speaking is scary as a limiting belief because of that throwaway
Yeah.
phrase. But
Isn't
it,
it?
in the eyes of the adult at the time, it's a throwaway phrase, but actually there's a lot of power to those words. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And
all of this is blocking us in the present.
isn't it just? And it's like children should be seen but not heard. And
Mm,
I mean, the radio show I do is for a radio show called Born to Be Heard. And it's like, isn't that great? Giving people a voice. And I found it by someone introducing it to me because they said I got a good voice for radio. And if I hadn't have heard that, and it was a compliment, right? And then had the courage, being a bit bold and just being curious to explore. But I had an idea because I know who I am I use human design as well. I've tried it all to find out on a cellular level and deep level. And I knew that an aspect of my strengths was communication and
mm.
speaking my truth. I choose my words carefully because words have vibration
Yeah,
and they have meaning. If
yeah,
you tell someone they're an idiot, which is a horrible thing to say, they might start to believe that and then get depressed and feel, lost and isolated and no sense of belonging. So, you know, this is the stuff we need to talk about.
yeah. Of course, yeah, yeah. I think my next book is about words. Actually, I'm still looking through that idea, but yeah, because they carry energy, and words are just ideas that we created, really. So they're ideas that we dressed up for our own physical benefit, but they do carry vibration.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we understand words because as we don't communicate very well, really, like
No.
as a whole, you know, when you look at it properly.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
true. We
and there's,
wear a mask. That's
yeah,
what we do. And I'm an ex people pleaser. So I'm only unlearning and remembering I don't need to do that to get love or attention or anything like that anymore. And I can see my own patterns now when I'm enthusiastic or encouraging and I'm trying to, please someone. And what I'm doing now is taking the mask off and saying, no, this is who I am. This is how I express myself. I like patience. I like understanding. And then when I feel safe, because there's a discomfort in all of that, then when I feel safe, I start to trust people. And then it just changes everything. And that's where I'm going at the moment, is giving people that permission to self-express. And even if something feels stupid, type of feeling, to ask questions, you
mm,
know? It's a great thing to do. I'm loving this conversation because we're digging under each, bit of conversation to see what's under there and having that sort of curiosity, which is really important.
yeah, of course, yeah. And I think, like you said, I think it all starts with self-awareness, doesn't it? And like you mentioned with people pleasing, if you do that now, the first step is like catching yourself doing it, isn't it? And
Yeah.
then becoming aware, oh, I've done that again. Why was that? Why am I doing that? And then it relates to something from 20 years ago or something.
Absolutely.
It's
Or even in
like,
coaching, when you're trying to, you have to work. What I'm finding is what platform, what medium works best for me. So because I'm quite self-expressive, um, writing loads of posts and all of this, it just takes me in my head. So I'm not then in my heart. And that for me has been the biggest healing tool for me, my voice, um, and self-talk. You know, really, I'm working on a deep level at the moment with someone in a group to really flood my subconscious with real positive affirmations. And I won't lie, there's been a lot of the old programming and patterns coming out, and have I felt quite lost. Well, now what do I do? Because I thought I was all of this, and now it's all coming out. Now what do I do? So that's why you need someone to hold your hand and walk you through it.
That's right. Yeah, self-talk is another massive one, isn't it? Because yeah, what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself is the most important conversation you're ever having, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. And it's the same with the cancer journey. You know, if you can, I mean, I had a scare. I didn't have it, but my family history was not great. So I elected for surgery. And the fear I went into just hearing some of those words, and it was like I had to really shift my perspective, you know, big time. But it does help a lot with lots of other, you know, practical ways of keeping aligned with self.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate test of faith, isn't it? When you get a health scare like that, for sure.
Mm.
And going back to the self-talk, when people are talking negatively about themselves, if they had heard someone else say what they say about themselves, they'd be angry with that person, and yet they allow themselves to do it.
I
It's just
know.
crazy. It's all like, there's a lot of things that need to be straightened out when it comes to self-awareness and
Yeah, and I think the shift in this perspective in the energetics that is really coming in, it's like it is permission. And I think this is the whole thing about talking with like-minded people is just giving all of us permission, making sure there's a safety around it and trust to just share what you need to share, you know, experience that this is the most important thing is life experience. You
yeah.
know, you can have all the qualifications coming out your ears and have no common sense whatsoever and not really know someone and prescribe things that just are totally wrong. And I'm so glad now I went on the route that I've been on, although it's been a long journey and it's still ongoing. You know, I'm glad that I listened to actually my intuition and not just the primal instinct is flight, fight, freeze to run away, right? Because
Yeah.
we don't like the uncomfortable feelings. But your intuition does know kind of what it needs. And that's what you have to get curious about.
Yeah, when you've hit the truth, isn't it? Because it's always there, isn't it? But it just sometimes you go into it and then you come out of it again. I
Mm.
remember when I started secondary school, and the teachers all sat us down and said, "Right, you're at secondary school now, so we want you to work well, but we want you to work fast." And I remember straight away me thinking, "Well, you can't work well if you work fast." Now
Yeah.
that's just an opinion that I have, but that is my truth. That's how I think now.
Yeah.
So I would never rush a project.
Nor do I. I mean, this is what
So
I was saying to someone today. I said, you know, you don't know me well enough. This is how I work. And actually, I do require some patience because I'm quite an analytical thinker. And it's like interesting on your book, you've almost got the two heads, two minds, and you know, in that on there. And it's like I can almost be in two minds.
yeah,
It's looking at my critical thinker and then my higher self and trying to balance out the two. And you can't do that. Like if you do that on knee-jerk reactions, you might get just on the wrong path.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Looking at my book cover though, can you see the vase as well?
Oh yeah.
So the idea by the design was that things might not be as you think they are. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, how funny.
So I
Yeah, I
was
can
trying to
see it.
play on that that little illusion thing, like we're an illusion of ourselves, and a lot of us don't back ourselves or give ourselves the credit.
It's
Um,
so true. It's so we don't give ourselves the credit, and and we forget. You know, we forget. Like I have to keep reminding myself how far I've come, And a lot of the kind of communities that I want to grow into and with are quite conscious communities where there's an element of getting feedback from your peers. It's a really powerful sort of thing to do where your peers kind of say, actually, I can see you public speaking or I can see you talking. And it's a very old ancestral way in community. That's what they did in communities. You go to the elders and they'd kind of give you guidance and advice. And so I'm quite blessed to be, part of some of those and to move past the illusion, is the people pleasing thing again, really. Move past that.
Yeah, yeah, move past that because well, what I say is your potential is limitless, if you truly wish to, strive and do things, Like you said, you were curious at the start. I've always been curious of that as well. I'd always look at people like, let's say Elvis Presley, for example, and always think, well, what is the difference between him and me, And I would always look at people like that because he's a human, I'm a human, so what is the difference? And look at the success principles and again, the truth. A lot of these people are living their truth, certainly in their art anyway. They might not have things figured out in all areas of their life, but in the areas in which we sit back and admire them, they're doing
Mm.
all the right things, when it comes to purpose.
Yeah, and I think it is about tapping into that creativity because we're all born with some sort of gift to give. And it's about tapping into that creativity. Because the world is very set up on not necessarily for everybody to be successful, almost to sort of fail, you've got to find that balance within you. And for me, later in life, it's like, well, I know that if I'm going for a job, like you say, frequencies down here, my energy levels up here because I get, into more interesting conversation and I'm doing a mundane job, I'm just going to be
Mm.
out of alignment, And it's okay for a while to be out of alignment because you can realign by keep coming back to self. What do I like? What do I love? What gives me joy? What makes me feel alive is a great question for people to take away from this for purpose. What makes me feel alive?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really powerful one. And I
Mm,
think as well, a good place question to ask as well is what don't I like? Because
yeah.
I know when I was doing my removals and storage industry, like, my company, when I started looking, what don't I like? I don't like the phone going 18 times a day because I'm not an audible person. I'm a visual person. But how do I know that? Because I'm self-aware. I learned the disc and vac profile. So I understand my behavior, my communication.
Mm.
I don't like connecting with customers of going through the third most stressful thing you can go through in life, So it's just understanding what you don't like as well also helps you, I think, get closer to your purpose.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I worked in the NHS as COVID was happening, and I could not satisfy people's needs. I couldn't satisfy my own, and no one had my back. And
Mm.
I was like, well, I'm going to have to do something radical. And I kind of left my job and I just levered my property with lodgers in the temporary state to bring in income. And then I sold. And I was just like, free me up from mortgage, get me out, get me out. And I've just been following this path ever since and really just continuing to learn, continuing to study. And, I'm a continual learner, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a brave thing to do, and take some courageous
Bonkers.
actions. But,
Yeah. It was aligned action. It was very scary. It all went very wrong I completed an exchange on the same day and it nearly went horribly wrong and all my stuff was in at the removal van and no exchange by 4:30 on moving day. It was pretty scary. Uh,
right.
yeah, with 40 quid in my purse and yeah, it was very scary, but I had faith
Yeah, you had the faith and it all, yeah, worked out.
in the end.
Yeah. But like you say, we are all prisons of our own making, and we're the only problem we're ever going to have. But it's
Yeah.
good because once you understand that and emotionally understand it, you also know you're the only solution. So
Yeah.
I know the great motivational speaker, Jim Rohn, he said something like, success is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by the person you become. So
Yeah.
instead of going after it, he says you stay, you work on yourself.
Yeah.
But that's comforting to know because because a lot of us have been brought up with this, you've got to work really hard to be successful,
You've got to
which is
work
the
hard for
burnout.
money, etc.
That's a belief that, was passed on to a lot of us, and it's not necessarily valid.
No, it's not. And I think maybe that's why I've had to go on the journey of taking some, and they were measured risks. I had a plan, but it's also about having a plan that's flexible and not too rigid. If you're not happy with where you are, you're not feeling a sense of fulfillment, joy, happiness, like, the high vibration, love, peace, joy, you're in this really kind of what feels like a stuck space and place. There are ways, like you say, you can unstuck yourself, or you can kind of look to others that perhaps have walked that path, and just learn different ways, different strategies. There's so many different ways, and you have to be realistic that it takes time. And you do have to be very disciplined. That's what I've found anyway. I've had to be very disciplined, you know, especially with the mind.
Yeah, yeah, the mind. Yeah, if you can control you when we talk about control the mind, it's a loose term really, but controlling these thoughts constantly because they're omnipresent, they're common all the time.
Yeah.
You can't switch off your thoughts for an hour. They're
No.
always there, but you've got to direct them. What are you going to accept? What are you going to reject? Because we got the power to do that.
I kind of have, and I think this is the whole point on me really wanting to stay true to my purpose, in that I'm in a year cycle that's all about endings and new beginnings. And it was like, well, I interview people on my radio show that tell me about meditation, and in 10 minutes you can change your perspective. And I've not fully committed to that. Why? These are the questions I've been asking myself. Well, I get distracted, or my mind wanders, or I don't think I can sit there so quietly for an hour, but in 10 minutes. So I've changed in the last month to being even more disciplined, to sorting my mindset out at the beginning of the day, because then I can be more aware of those one or two thoughts that are really useful, and trying to direct me towards more of my feeling of purpose.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And I
Mm.
noticed you used the word plan as well. You had a plan because a lot of people, I don't know if you ran into it yourself, but a lot of people would get sort of trapped in this meditation. It's part of moving forward, it's part of finding your purpose, but a lot of people will just meditate and it
Yeah.
makes them feel good. And then, but the issue is there are some things you have to do after you
Yeah.
finish meditating. Would you agree with that?
I totally would agree. As I said, I've been on this journey since 2008, when I first had this, let's call it awakening, dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. And I've done every kind of therapy you can think of. And it's only been recently that I've done the let's sit there for an hour doing meditation, even yoga, and all these different things. And so for me, having such a busy, busy, busy mind with lots of thoughts, of quite analytical and heady, it's like I'm bypassing. It's like I don't want, and especially getting a skin condition, it's like, no, you don't want to connect, right, with your body.
Mm.
It's bypassing. And so now my perspective is, this is why I've created these 6 practical ways to align with purpose, is the step 2 of doing 10-minute kind of meditation is move your body intentionally, right? So I'm shifting my perspective, and this is before I'm perhaps journaling some intentions or asking myself curious questions, is I'm moving my body. So this is what I've worked out on my my journey is asking myself the right questions and checking in with my body and not checking out. And I think that's a bit of checking out from my point of view. Meditating for hours and sitting on a rock, waiting for it to come to you or whatever, is a little bit of bypassing, zoning out.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that 100% because I find when you run into these people, they'll tell you stuff like they want for nothing, they don't want nothing, they don't need nothing, but actually, our wants come from the essence of who we are, and we're all spiritual beings. So that they'll use words like, are you spiritual? And we're all spiritual beings.
Yes,
We're
we
live
are.
we're living in physical bodies, and our spirit is always seeking expansion and fuller expression. So our wants come from the essence of who we are. So if you sit there and tell me that you don't want nothing, I don't. I think you're bypassing. That's probably the
It's
best
true.
way to
It's
say it.
yeah.
You're
Um,
bypassing.
it's 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 an interesting, curious one because I've been on the polar sides of the abundance journey. I used to raise hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity. I used to run a charity for young carers, and so I've been curious on the fundraising journey and my own self employment journey. And it's just interesting whether you've got 500,000 in your bank account or £5 or nothing. It depends on how you really feel about yourself and those needs, wants, desires, and whether on a soul level, there was a choice. Like you say, we're spirit in a body. If you believe this, we've come here to have a life experience. Let's just put it as basic as that. And for me, I've come here to learn both sides of the coin, I think, just so I can have more empathy and more understanding and understand that purpose really is enrichment. It's enriching your life and it's enriching others with your wisdom. That really is what I'm finding, on this journey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because if we were expressing who we really are, life would be so much better for us and our loved ones. So I
Yeah.
always say, be the best you can be. And some people will say, well, that's selfish. And I'll say, well, actually, if you think about it, if you're the best you can be, how good a mum, how good a friend are you going to be? The best, right? So actually, it's
Amazing.
selfless.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, good.
so
Yeah, let's do this. Let's step into the most expanded version of ourselves. And so as consciousness is rising, with light, there's dark. There's black, there's white, there's polarity. We have a lot of polarization in the world right now. We have a lot of judgment and opinion. And it's like looking at yourself and getting comfortable with being best friends with yourself and being the best version of you as much as you can to kind of think, okay, let's rise. And that's what we need to do now. We really need to rise together and use the energetics that are coming for 2025. We can feel them already. They're coming. And let's use that uplifting energy to let go. And I love the way your book is black and white, you know,
yeah, it's just simple.
showing that.
What I wanted the book to live forever, like I wanted an old style type book. A
Yeah,
lot of self-help authors are writing books as a way to upsell people to their digital product. I
yeah,
didn't want this specific one like that, so I wanted it basic as possible, and I wanted the rustic sort of. I think I
yeah.
said I wanted it to be a gem of the universe, and I got a couple of reviews saying that term actually when I first started doing it.
Well,
Yeah.
that is great. And
Um,
for me, I just want things to be simplistic because if you do go on this spiritual journey of self-awareness and self-discovery, you perhaps might find it incredibly confusing and you might get very lost in that. And I think when people talk about severe mental illness, um, schizophrenia, all these different, like I've interviewed people and I've had, people on my podcast and suicide and all these different topics that, people can get very lost. And what I found on my journey, because I do have that faith and I do have that sort of sense of spiritual, but I'm just an ordinary, down to earth, grounded, practical person. And I've used practical strategies and practical tools and tips to
Yeah.
just keep myself um, on the earth, and just keep going, with this journey.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important to be as simple as possible. Like
Yeah,
you mentioned, the law of polarity there. So, yeah, the first thing is to get self-aware and then get aware of these laws because we're living with laws.
yeah,
There's no two ways about it. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. No one questions the law of gravity because they can see something fall from a. No one
exactly,
questions that law because they can see it with their physical eyes, but everyone questions the law of attraction, the law of vibration. The law of polarity is basically the law of opposites. There's a left, there has to be a right. There's a top, there has to be a bottom,
yeah,
an inside and an outside. So if you have a bad thought about something, you cannot possibly have a bad thought without the potential for there to be a good thought.
exactly,
So that's a very simple way of looking at the law of polarity, especially with your self-talk as well. Just go to the polarity. If you think of negative thought, don't over-identify with it. Just be creative and change it into the polar opposite. That's a
exactly. It's the
tactic
reframing,
I
isn't
do.
it? And I think this is the sort of thing with, so I'm kind of digging under judgment, right? Because I feel so much judgment coming up in the world. And so I've got to look at my own judgment. And it really is just stemming with reframing and actually having empathy, having compassion and empathy for yourself, because you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions, if you believe that. And there's work to be done. And if we all do it, then we can raise in consciousness, right? We can shift.
Yeah,
Well,
that's right. That's right. And about judgment, a phrase that I like is really good. It's never judge someone by what they become. Judge them by what they had to overcome to
mm,
become what they become. I
brilliant.
really like that. Um, yeah,
Love it.
there's a
True.
lot of there's a lot of judgment out there, but you don't need to buy into it,
No.
is the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the whole thing about aligning with purpose, creating a bubble, but not zoning out, checking out, bypassing. It's like, right, this is my bubble. I mean, I was talking to a friend yesterday. We went on a walk and talk therapy, into nature, and we were walking and talking. And she was expressing fears, and I'm like, well, as long as my world is good. That's my focus, because I
Mm,
cannot literally afford for me to get caught up in other people's dramas. And I
yeah,
think this is what we've been taught and this is the whole point of why I've been working on this aligning with my own purpose, to keep me on track so that I can then look at more envision work, where you can literally feel your new reality into your now present reality, and it takes time and practice.
yeah. That's a good word, practice, because it really does. It's not an overnight thing, is it? And I just want to talk about the creative faculties in our mind quickly, like our perception, our will, intuition, and memory and reason. I mean, these creative faculties are given to humans only. Like no other life form have these, cats, dogs, anything. We've been given these creative faculties. So would you say that one, we're here to create,
Mm,
and two is your purpose where you're creative?
mm, yeah, that's what I'm finding. I feel when I am not in flow, I'm not creating. I was literally doing a podcast this morning with my guests as just a snippet, because the Wi-Fi went when it was just getting juicy. It was like, oh no. So I've got a small amount, about 3 minutes. And she was recalling being a little girl, because I was trying to get her to say, what did you always want to be? And she was just talking about creativity and being in flow. So when I'm not in flow, and I'm not being creative. Some of us predominantly are more creative than others, and I think that's part of your exploratory journey. You know, look at what jobs you've done, what jobs you like, what you don't like. You can find that out. But I'm very creative, and so I'd say yes to that question. And I'm when I'm overriding my intuition, it's because I'm quite analytical and logical, and I have to balance my logic with my creativity,
Mm.
you know?
Because I find like any person you meet who's doing something creative, they're always happy and they're always in a, that happy, upbeat state. Even
Yeah,
my daughter, she's 7. If she like upset or something, I always just say, "Oh, go and draw a picture or something."
yeah,
Instantly, mood changes, the creativity, because I believe that's what we're here to do. And I don't say that, but I'm not religious or anything like that. I know it says it in the Bible, we're creators, but I'm going on the basis, like you say, keep it simple. We've been given creative faculties in our mind that no other life form has been given.
yeah,
Why?
yeah,
To use them. Yeah, that's what I think. And
yeah,
that's why chapter 1 in my book is You Are Limitless. And this talks about the creative faculties because no one knows how far they extend to. There's no measure to them. Every
no,
material object you see in the world was once one idea in one person's mind. Like
exactly.
even the chairs we sit on all come from our creative faculties.
Yeah,
So
it's
we
genius, really, isn't it?
we are creators. And this goes back to like the people who just sit around meditating and say they don't want for nothing or don't need to do nothing. That's where I disagree because I
Yeah,
believe we're here to create.
we are. And if I was interviewing a guy called Tom Evans, who's written lots of books on thoughts and meditation, etc. And he was sort of explaining to me about the right side of your brain. It's out there, creativity, right? And then the left side of your brain, logic, is in there. And it's like something's just clicked for me with that, when you can like lose yourself for hours, like you say, go draw. And then you're just drawing for hours and hours and hours, and it's creative, right side creativity out there, left side logic in there. And it's just something that's clicked for me with that, with just trying to balance it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's really good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've got that image again in my book, but I've never looked at it like that. But it's really interesting. Yeah, so
mm,
I suppose the creative side of you, you're trying to pick up the new energies to create. And where what he's saying about the left side, you stay in, you're
yeah,
using your conscious mind, what you've already sort of got,
yeah. Well,
drawing
it's
from your
critical
past
thinking.
experience.
You've got like logical, critical thinking that we need every day to concentrate, or trigger the brain to move your legs, etc. And then this vast, incredible, expansive, like part of you where there's infinite ideas and possibilities. And this is the whole point about making sure there's some sort of alignment. Some people use the chakras to do that, but really, if you're thinking about your brain, when you could be thinking such a positive thought, and then before you know it, you get a message from someone. Isn't that
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
phenomenal?
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's trying to sort of say. So that's kind of clicked for me. Like, I'm 80% creative, and I use my 20% logic to
Mm.
do the finance, the digital stuff, how to run a business. And you got to kind of use that. You can't just be totally out there meditating all day. And I think that's what relates to that. When you're bypassing, you're not necessarily using that other part, that logical part of your brain, to problem solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, then let's look at wrapping this up. So I'm going to try and go on the inside out idea. Would you say that is where you've got to go inside to find your purpose? So, for instance, talking about creativity, I'm thinking of an artist who's local, actually. I've got a painting downstairs, but she painted that painting. That's part of her personality, that's part of her, but no one could see that until she painted it. She had to go inside to paint it, but it's part of her personality, and now it's on our wall. So that is part of her, like the inside out. Would you agree that you've got to go inside in order to find
Yeah.
your purpose?
I do. I think it really is. It's an inside job. And I think it's in and out. You know, if you can go, it's a bit like think about lockdown when we're all kind of locked down for such a period of time. Lots of people really started to go inward, didn't they?
Yeah.
To explore what they really wanted because their things were taken away. And so from that incredible creativity. There's so many artists, there's so many talented people. They were almost forced to do that. But because life is so out there, it's a bit like when you just people say, oh, you're just too much and you're just out there all the time. And they're by again, it goes back to this bypassing. So yeah, it comes from the inside out, but it definitely is a bit of both. So this is why I love the life purpose cycle, where life actually goes in energetic cycles. And if you know the cycle you're in, you can work with it. It's numerology, a book by Dan Millman, The Life You're Born to Live. That really helps with going in there and finding what cycle you're in and working with it. And that's what I've done. I've worked with the different life cycles to find where I'm at, and then use the universal energy to kind of measure, and then just express myself.
And do you journal it out once you get some ideas from inside? Do you
Yeah,
then journal them through? So that's like bringing it from the inside out. You've given it
yeah,
form. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like I call it like what's my inspirations and insights
Yeah.
day. Because when people are going through mental health, they might get all these ideas and inspirations, um, but it might be so random and they can't necessarily make sense of it. But if you quiet down the mind, even just for 10 minutes a day, you could just become even more aware. And for me, I've just had similar patterns, similar themes, similar dreams, similar goals, because I've got this awareness of who I am. So it's really helpful to know those bits of information to create and then come from a place of purpose.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I think we'll end it there. That's a great spot to end on. So thank you so much for being part of this episode.
It's been
Um, you say you've got a website and things like that. We'll have all the links in the description.
Yeah, I've got a bio actually. I haven't got a website at the moment, but I've got different links to Insight Timer and where people can find me for my radio show, podcast, etc. So I'll send you the bio link.
Awesome. Okay, then. That's all for this episode, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.